right, good morning, families. I'm Stacy Howard, the director of Zeka School of Arts and Technology. I wanted to come to you today, one, to just say thank you for such a awesome first week of school. We completed our first 4 days, and it went relatively smoothly. We still have some kinks to work out with our blended learning program and some other things, but overall, we felt like reintroducing the students to the facilities and starting with our blended learning went great. But I wanted to spend some time just to help clarify some of the issues that we came across so that we can provide you some assistance with working at home. And so let's start with just talking about and having an understanding about what blended learning actually is. All right, so as you know, we have our students broken into two groups, cohort A and cohort B. On your day to be on campus, when a student is on campus sitting at their desk, they are experiencing what we call the traditional style of teaching, where the teacher is in the class with the student and the teacher has 100% control over the instruction, and she also has 100% control over maintaining the classroom management, the discipline and procedures that need to happen into the class to make sure that the class instruction is not disrupted. That's the traditional style teaching that your child receives when they are on campus on their cohort day. At the same time, if your child is at home learning, we have what you call virtual learning. And many of you experienced the virtual learning back in March when schools closed down. And what that was is everybody is at home and the teacher is sitting in front of his or her laptop. She's in control of 100% of the instruction, and she also has some control, not much, over the class management of the behavior system because she's sitting right there at the computer screen and she can mute students, unmute students. She can watch students and see how they're engaging in the class. That's more of the what we call the virtual style setting. Okay, she doesn't have 100% control over discipline issues and behavior issues and being able to keep kids focused in that virtual world, but her attention is solely on the computer in that class in the virtual environment. Now we have what's called blended learning, and that's what you guys had an opportunity to experience last week. In the blended learning environment, we're merging both the virtual world with the traditional world, and we're coming together as one. So to make that happen, what that looks like is you have your students that are in class, like I'm in our third grade class right now, and we have students who are sitting at their desk and the teacher is engaging and teaching those students. And then we have installed these nice little poly cameras that you see here. This is called a Poly 50. All it is a camera. You see the camera here, and this is a big microphone attached to the camera. And as the teacher is in class teaching, this camera is following her around. So wherever he or she goes, the camera follows the teacher, and it allows the students at home to have a 360 view of the room. They can see corner to corner. They can hear whenever it's through the poly. They can hear everything that is going on in the classroom. The polys are operated with little handheld poly connectors like this, which it connects us to Microsoft Teams. So the learning management system that we use so that kids can participate in the blended learning is Microsoft Teams. All right, so at home, your child will log into their meeting for Microsoft Teams, and then their pictures or faces will appear on the TV, and now through the poly, they're able to see and hear everything that's going on. Now, with that blended environment, the teacher is no longer solely focusing on the student in class, neither is she or he available to focus solely on the student in the virtual environment. In the blended world, the idea or concept is we are bringing kids from home into the classroom. So now they're able to be part of the class in real time. That's why we send packets home on Monday, not for you to do the packets all week or ahead of time, but so that when that teacher is about to work on a worksheet or a task in class, if you're at home, you should have access to that same form. Through Microsoft Teams, the teachers are also able to upload assignments so that if you're at home, she can tell you where to find what is currently being worked on in class so that you can follow along. Now, this concept is new because it's used in the business world. When you see this in the business world, you'll see businesses having video conferences with people who are in different parts of the world and they need to be real time in the office. They use this concept. This is a relatively new concept to be using in the classroom setting because now our kids that are at home on the television screen can feel like they're in class. But that's going to take a lot of getting used to. Let me tell you why. As a classroom teacher, we are trained and our mind is trained to manage a classroom of students that are sitting in front of us. So when we're in the classroom teaching, we are doing a lot of things. You're giving instruction, you're monitoring how students are moving within that instruction to provide additional feedback. You're managing the class behaviors to prevent huge or major distractions to the learning. So it's a lot of things that your senses are doing to make your classroom flow efficiently. Now add that with a blended environment where I now have kids that are at home that I can't really control, but they're able to see me. That child can hear my instruction. I can ask the child questions and have them to answer and participate, but I can't see every little thing that the child is doing at home, and I can't manage every distraction that might be happening in that Microsoft Team room because I'm not virtual. I'm not sitting just in front of a computer screen making sure that happens. I'm having to move about. So as a teacher, we have to retrain our mind to be mentally present to what's in front of us and also mentally present to what's in that blended virtual world. And so that's going to take some getting used to because that's something teachers haven't done or had to do before. It was either I'm doing all of virtual or I'm doing all of in class. Never am I doing both. So now that we're doing both, we have to retrain our minds so that we are being able to effectively engage in two worlds at one time. Now last week, we had a lot of connection issues because our teachers was just getting trained in poly. I want you to know that it was Monday night at 5 o'clock. We were opening school on Tuesday. It was Monday night at 5 o'clock that the polys were finished being installed. They hadn't even had a day of training when they walked in on Tuesday to start using it. So the training was occurring simultaneously as having to use it. And so I think they did an awesome job not to just fall apart and quit. So this is a learning curve for our staff and for our teachers. They are learning how to use the Poly 50s. They also are faced with having to learn how to interface with Microsoft Teams. As you know, if you was with us last year in March, we used Zoom. And it took us a while to get used to Zoom, and we got it, and then it had to change to Microsoft Teams. And Teams is very similar to Zoom, but it's also very different. And so the teachers are learning how to use Teams, and they got that Monday night right before school started. So last week we did really good because we was able to connect with everybody. We was able to see everybody. We were able to get all the polys up and running finally by Friday. And so we are anticipating that this week will be much, much better. We're asking you, though, at home to be patient with us because with this new learning curve, we're learning the kinks just as you are, being able to experience it. And we are anticipating that each day is going to get better and each day is going to get easier. But we are not going to come out the gates using something we've never used before without any issues. And that is not just an issue that is a problem for Zeka. Unfortunately, that is a problem across the state. And we have seen and heard from other of our colleagues who still don't even have kids connected, who still don't even have kids with computers in their hands, who are still experiencing some of the same problems and issues that we are experiencing. So it's definitely going to take us doing this together as one unit and just being patient with each other. Now, I want to give you some tips. If your child is 100% virtual at home, joining the blended environment, and also some tips for on the days that your child goes back home and have those 2 days that they're working from home. First of all, with Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams is making a lot of changes. Right now, for instance, my teachers can mute the entire class in Microsoft Teams. Unfortunately, your child at home can come right behind her or him and unmute themselves. In Zoom, that was different. In Zoom, if we muted the whole class, a student could not unmute themselves without permission from the teacher. But this is an issue that's not a Zeka issue, it's a Microsoft Teams issue. We have put in our request, and as well as other educators across the state, to say, hey, Microsoft Teams, y'all need to change that. Because what we see happening is, when we put the entire class in mute and your child come behind the teacher and unmute it, it's causing a distraction in the classroom, okay? Because we can now hear everything that's happening in your home. So what our teachers have done is on the Poly 50, they have turned their volume down so that if students unmute themselves, they cannot hear the distractions here in class. However, if you are online with other parents and everybody that's in the virtual world, they still can hear that noise, and it has been a huge distraction for the virtual world. We get your phone calls, we appreciate your phone calls, we hear those distractions, we know those distractions, but because we don't have access to everybody home and we can't control everyone's kids, it's going to take us to do this together. So parents, please have a conversation with your child that says, when that teacher mutes the classroom, please tell your child to stay muted. They are unmuting themselves so that they can talk to each other in the virtual world, not realizing that everybody can hear them. So please talk to your child about keeping the mute on mute. We did talk to Microsoft Teams because we had kids who was chatting with each other while the lesson was going on. So they were chatting back and forth to their friends who were also home in the virtual world. And they were calling each other through Teams. We did talk to the team rep, and he was able to block that. So now students can only chat to the main chat box, which will be seen by everybody. They can't chat one-on-one, and they can't call each other one-on-one privately. But we're still having issues with chat because when teachers are teaching, the only time a child should put something in the chat box is if they have a question, and right now, really, they can unmute themselves to ask the question. But if the chat box should only be if they're trying to have a conversation with the teacher, not for them to be talking with their friends. So that's another way that you can help us at home, is to make sure that your child is not in the chat box chatting and being distracted and distracting others by sending these chats that have nothing to do with the lesson. Okay? The other way you can help us at home is to remember this. We hear, just like with the Poly system here, and the students can see everything that's happening in the class from that 360 view, it's the same thing at home. So we really need you to find a quiet place within your house for your child to connect to their Microsoft Teams meetings. Because if you're in the kitchen cooking, the system is picking that up, and now every child in class and at home can hear those pots and pans rattling, and it's becoming a distraction for towards the learning. Also, if you are having issues with your child and you want to discipline, we don't govern homes, so I'm never going to get into if you want to spank your child or not spank your child. That's your business. I just want to remind you that with Microsoft Teams, they're not muted. So when you're frustrated and you're parenting your child, whether you are threatening to spank them or you're trying to assist them, everybody hear those threats. So we're asking you to please make sure, if you want to discipline or govern your child in a way that is safe, make sure your cameras are off and your sound is muted before you discipline the child because of their distractions or whatever, because every home can hear it. We've had a couple of classes that, especially in our kindergarten classes, where we had to disconnect from the poly because it was cursing in the background. Again, I'm not going to get into whether you should curse or not. That's your business. All we ask is for parents to remember that in this blended learning world, we can hear what's happening in your home just like you can see and hear what's happening here. So if we have cursing, if we have arguing, fighting, if we have spanking, crying, if we have the discipline of other kids in another room, all of that is coming through the camera. And not only are you experiencing it, but now other families are experiencing what's happening in your household, and we in class are experiencing what is happening in your household. And we do have a due diligence to keep everybody safe, and we're asking that you just be mindful, and during those times, please make sure your camera is muted, make sure your camera is off, and just work with this. We know that this is a very frustrating time for everybody. Again, we do not want you to be the teacher. We do want you to just help us by making sure your child is paying attention, not causing and creating distractions, so that they can hear what's going on in the class. Now, the unfortunate thing about real time is that if you join class late and the teacher has already started, she's already bypassed some things, so she may not wrap back around to it. So the purpose of that real-time learning is to make sure that the student is in class, ready to learn and paying attention. Again, we cannot discipline children through a television set. We cannot discipline children through a computer screen. So the only thing we ask from parents when you are in this virtual world for this blended learning experience is to make sure that you minimize the distractions that your child may be having at home. Just make sure your baby is logged in. Make sure they're paying attention to the screen. Make sure they're following along with what is going on in class. The teachers are currently improving, making sure they're going to give out schedules so that you will know when your child should be in class or not. They are also putting together some procedures that you can use at home, like in class now. In my third grade class, if a student unmute themselves, she take away points. Well, of course, taking away points don't matter if it's not supported at home. So we're gonna give you those virtual procedures, and we're gonna ask you to help implement those at home and celebrate kids when they're doing well as well. But just know that in this blended world, to bring together kids from the virtual world with the kids in the classroom will take some time. And it most importantly will take us all working together. You don't have to worry about the content, but we do need you when your child is connected through Teams to help manage anything that would be a distraction. I do plan to do a training on Teams for parents. We'll be sending out that information later this week so that you can connect and be able to learn more about Microsoft Teams, so you'll know how to use that interface when you're at home. So we hope that you join us for that meeting. We will continue to send out little tips. As we learn more, we'll share what we learn with you so that this will be a good experience for everyone. And again, we just want to say we are in this together. We are Zeka Strong. We will get through this process. We want our kids to learn as much about the Poly 50 and about Microsoft Teams in these next 15 days that we have left in school before everyone becomes virtual, so that we can have a great learning environment for this year. Again, thank you to all the parents who've called in with your concerns. We hear you. We know it. If you hear cussing, we heard it too. If you heard the pots clanking, we heard it too. And we're dealing with it on our end. But just know that it takes all of our families to come together and help us with that. And also know that our teachers are working hard to improve their ability of knowing and remembering that they have two environments going on simultaneously. When this thing get worked out, it will be awesome because it's not many school districts in this area that I know of who is using blended learning in that way. And that's what we want to be as a school of technology. We want to be ahead of the game, and we want to have high quality technology opportunities for our students, but we do have to have that time to work it out. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your evening.